What's up, guys? Tim Austin with DragBoss Garage. Welcome back to the channel. I'm glad you guys are here. We've got a special live chat with Stacey David, who was kind enough to spend some time with us here. So I want to give him a quick, big shout out. Shout out to you guys, the subscribers that make this channel possible for me. I'm at 18,500. So not like Stacey that has, I think, 361,000, but you know, it's not the number of subscribers that you have; it's the content that you have. I think, and that's
absolutely,
what makes a difference. So my wife's watching, Mrs. DragBoss. Big shout out to you, Izzy and Elena. They might come out and say hi. I don't know what they're doing, but they may come out and say hi to you. So, you know, I always remember you saying, "What are you working on?"
Yeah,
Stacey, and that's your catchphrase. You know, I always remember you saying that kind of stuff when you do Reader's Rise or you start reading about questions that people have. And I want to thank you for taking time out of your family, your life, everything you got going on to spend time with me here. So thank you, Stacey. I appreciate that.
Well, thanks for having me, man. You got an awesome deal you're doing here. And I just, I love to talk cars. So,
oh, yeah.
You know, it's funny, the what are you working on thing, it's funny how that came about. My wife is actually the one that pinpointed that. She goes, you know, because I wanted to do something after I left the show trucks.
Yep.
We're starting Gearz. You know, it was like I want to do something that features the average everyday guy. Because I was one of those, you were one of those, Chip Foose was one of those at one time. We were all there. And the hardest thing to do is to get recognized. You know, back then, you either had to get in on a magazine or something like that. But to get recognized was very difficult. You had to build a top level thing, and not everybody can do that and all that stuff. And I was like, you know, if we're going to keep this industry going, we have to recognize the guy busting his hump in a garage, building what he can on his budget. And that's the what are you working on thing. That's where it came from. But my wife, she came up to me. She said, why don't you just call it what are you working on? I said, well, how come? She says, you say that all the time. Every time you go up to somebody, that's the first thing you say. You hold out your hand and say, what are you working on? I said, I do not. I do not. And sure enough, it's like, oh my gosh, you know, so that's where and it's been from day one on Gearz, and probably one of my favorite parts of the show, because guys send in crazy stuff and it's just fun, you know, so, and you get some high end, you know, show cars as well.
Okay.
But we just like to showcase everybody.
Well, I'm honored that you know, I'm just a little YouTube channel, you know, Tim Halston. I'm nothing special. But I appreciate you reaching out to me when I emailed you and saying, hey, you know what? I would like to do that. Big shout out to Jonathan for helping us.
Oh, yeah.
He's like your production guy, production manager.
Yeah, he's an associate producer. Yeah, he makes all my schedules happen. It gets really crazy during the shooting season, especially since we've been doing the podcast and stuff. You know, I've got, you know, Jonathan handles that, and he handles a lot of the website stuff, and then Zach does all of our social media. You know, and it's all different worlds. It's kind of like a carburetor guy and a fuel injection guy, you know, that kind of stuff. And I just focus on the car stuff.
Okay.
You know, so.
Well, thank you. It's I don't know what to say. All I can do is say thank you. You know, I think we have a common bond and a common goal is I want to share knowledge. I always tell people you never know what you're going to see or learn on DragBoss Garage. And I try to hold true to that because you know what? You got to give back to these guys. And this is I'm not saying it's on its way out tomorrow, but it's kind of fading down. It's not like it was hard to get parts. People aren't going into this industry, you know, and if I can spark an interest by watching, you know, one of my videos or one of my live chats with guys like you, a pioneer who's been around, who has a TV show, who's made it. I mean, that's an inspiration for guys to watch this stuff, I think.
Yeah. I tell you what, you know, I'm glad you brought that up, because if we don't do something to protect this industry, it'll go away. You know, we were talking about Ted Nugent a little earlier.
Yeah.
You know, he looked at me one time. I had him on the show a couple of times. We did some crazy stuff. And he goes, the same people that want to take the guns out of my hand want to take the wrenches out of your hands.
That's true.
And it's totally true. You know, they don't want us to be able to do that. You know, they don't want us to modify our vehicles. You know, the battles that we fight on that. This whole electric thing is a total, you know, and if we don't stand up for that, our sports go away, our racing goes away, our driving goes away, and pretty soon we can't even modify our vehicles. And people are like, well, you're crazy. That'll never happen. It's like, you remember this. You remember the 85-mile-an-hour speedometers, the shit off in the 80s?
Yep.
And the square body Chevy trucks? Yeah. They were building vehicles that wouldn't even do over 90 miles an hour anymore.
Like
those days were gone.
Yeah.
So
let me give a couple shout outs to guys that are on here. We've got about 27 guys on here, and we're just starting. So Tom Lewandowski, it's good to see you here. Andy Wood from Unity Motorsports Garage, welcome here. Ken Moole, Bill Kirstein, Chad.
Bill's grilling some steaks, man.
I see that. Okay, so you can read these, and if someone asks you, I'll read it out. It says grilling steaks. I can actually put it up here. We'll put it up here. Grilling some steaks in sunny Florida, and listen to one of my favorite YouTuber car guys who always has great content and guests. Thanks, Tim. Well, thanks, Bill. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
definitely. And just ask Australia about modified street cars.
Yeah,
there you go.
My daughter actually went to school in Australia, and she was filling me in on what it was like, because there's a big car culture in Australia.
Sure.
But man, and a big Ford, they love Fords there. Oh my gosh.
Cleveland, it's still
Clossie's like a legend there.
Yes, they are, without a doubt.
But if we don't protect this stuff, man, we really have to look out, not just for our stuff, but for the younger generation coming up, because it'll go away.
I'm telling you, just like this.
Yeah.
What's up?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just giving them a quick shout out there. Go ahead, Stace.
I was talking with some guys at SEMA a couple years ago, and we were talking about, a lot of the reality shows that are just a bunch of shenanigans and foolishness and stuff. And we don't do a reality show. We do a how-to show. It's a big difference.
Big.
And I'm really adamant about that. And people have tried to make us do that. I will not do that, because it really gives the industry a black eye. It makes us all look like fools. And, like we were talking about, there's Gail Banks and John Cossey and all these guys that are brilliant engineers, and yet we have some of these crazy, people representing our industry, and it makes us all look like idiots. Mm-hmm. And once the consensus gets out there to the average person, if you walk down the street and you just ask the average person, what do you think a car guy is? Describe him to me. You'd be shocked at what they'd say. And it would be embarrassing, because that's not, just based on the reality shows that you see, that's what your average person is going to say.
Yeah.
And they're not going to say it's cool. They're going to say, oh, they're morons, they're idiots, they rip you off, they're all flippers, they're trying to take advantage of people buying and selling.
Polluting everywhere. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it.
And listen, man, we got to have fun with cars. I'm not saying not do that, but the way we are perceived as an industry is what will eventually go before Congress and that kind of stuff. And all of these guys, let's give a scenario, okay? Say a couple of guys are out street racing, and they hit a school bus full of kids, kill all those kids.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think is going to happen? Somebody's going to go in there, especially if one of the kids on the bus was a congressman's kid.
Oh, sure.
They're going to pass a law tomorrow.
Yep.
Eliminating any kind of performance vehicles whatsoever. And the thing is, we don't have a Second Amendment protecting us as car people like the gun world does. I'm a big gun guy too.
Yeah.
But see, if we don't have that, we have to really be careful, and make sure that we're, making sure that people understand this industry, to get them out on drag strips, racetracks, that kind of thing. And we don't condone that crazy stuff, even though we've all street raced.
Sure we have.
We still do, but you got to be careful with that, man.
That's where I'm kind of like, my channel is more pro stock drag racing from back in the mid 70s. I'm a drag racer. I'm trying to teach my kids that kind of stuff. Although my car is just, chassis guy just called me up before you came on and said, listen, I got the parts all done. Maybe Thursday, pick it up, put it all together, and then we'll measure the caster and camber and toe and stuff with some plates, kind of get it down to a baseline. So I'm pumped for racing, and that's not, drag racing isn't what it used to be. Those classes, people aren't doing it anymore, Yeah. At least
No, I'm sitting here. I'm just looking at what is behind you, man, and I'm like having trouble concentrating on you because you got so much cool stuff. I'm looking at intakes and blocks and heads, valve covers. You got the Jolly Roger up there on the wall.
There it is, man. I mean, it's a man cave. You know what I mean? And what I'm doing is trying to record history of racing as much as I can and education for people to have a reference to.
Yeah.
Video diary for my kids so they can look back and say, hey, there's me and dad pulling a carburetor or pulling the valve covers on that engine or the oil pan. You know, some kind of video history for them and some type of entertainment to show what's out there, you know, different ways to do things. You know, there's more than one way to do something.
Yeah.
You know? And you got to learn and take what you can from someone like you. You know, you see some of your shorts and I see some good little tips on there. It's like, boom, write that down. You might need that, you know? It's helping the other guy.
It's really funny because all that stuff, you know, I started doing those quick tips years ago, clear back on the trucks days. And it was just all those things. They call them hacks now.
Yeah.
You know? But it's all that stuff that you learn from those guys. I mean, I grew up working in shops with guys, you know, those old guys that just had all that knowledge.
Yes.
You know, scars all over them and all that great stuff. And you just learned all those little tips. And that's the kind of thing, you can't learn those on YouTube. You can't, all those tricks, those things, you know, I that's why I'm always telling people, it's like, you got to get out and actually grab a welder and start welding. That's when you become a welder. You know, you can't watch the videos, you know, because it's just not the same. It's just not, it doesn't give you the feel. And so, and especially, you know, we're talking about drag racing. I just, you know, I got the bug on that early on. And part of it was, you know, I was out street racing and some buddies of mine said, hey, you need to come out to the drag strip. And man, the first time I thought street racing was fun. But once you got out there and you're sitting there and those lights start to go down, that rush, that adrenaline, oh my gosh, there's nothing like it.
I have just as much fun driving around the pits than I do sometimes racing. You know, showing off what you built with your own hands that, you know, these guys didn't do. They bought it, you know, and that's one thing I like. You know, you always say, look, don't be afraid to try something. I've heard you say that many times. And I always tell my guys that watch my videos, same thing. Try it. The worst thing you're going to do is screw up, and then you got to get help. You know, that's it. And give a couple shout outs. Got some guys from Australia. You were talking about that. And he was just talking about, this is Greg, goes by the Shed. Where I live in Western Australia, we have the most restricted regulations in Australia, which I've heard that. From fuel.
Man, how do they get around it? I mean, that's terrible. Because, you know, at least the good thing around here, and I don't know what it's like in Australia, but it's probably similar. All the cops are gearheads. So we're out messing around and ripping around and doing fun stuff all the time. But if you ever do something really stupid where they have to come down on you, they got to throw the law at you. So you got to be careful. You know, we had the Copperhead truck back. I was doing some maintenance on it for the guy that owns it. And that's that C10 that I did years ago with that 572 in it. And so I took it down here to the local corner. What's that?
I said, I put it up here in the corner for you. Here, I'll show you a whole picture.
Yeah.
Right.
And see that we took that thing out and we were shooting some shots on it. We were doing a story on it and how it was iconic for its day and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, within 5 minutes, here come the cops. Somebody had already called us in that we were disrupting the peace. So, and I knew the cops and they're like, yeah, we know what you're doing. They said, you can't. We gotta have you move down the road. So that's even changed in the last 10 years. I mean, I used to be able to shoot stuff all up and down the road here.
Now, were you in Nashville? Is that where you are right now?
I'm in Nashville. I'm just a little bit north of Nashville. I'm about 20 minutes from downtown.
Okay.
But on the way toward Bowling Green. Now I can go up to Holly there at Bowling Green or the Corvette track and do an official track. But, you know, a lot of the stuff we do, the test drives that we do are on roads. And as you know, a racetrack it looks like a racetrack.
Right.
So, you know, if you take a street car out on a racetrack, it's not very exciting. You know, especially if it's a curvy track, you know. Sure. Go ahead.
It's sliding all over the place. You know, it's not made to handle like that.
Oh, yeah.
The other thing that you see is people that take, you know, I put 1,000 horsepower in my Chevy Nova. And and now I'm going to go take it to the local car show and do a burnout.
Yeah.
You see these guys fail at this. You know, I mean, my car is only 700 horsepower driving on the street, 750. And that's enough to scare you. You can't play with a throttle.
You got that sucker that high in the air, man. I love those pictures.
You like those pictures, huh?
I love those pictures.
Well,
see, I'm so glad you brought that up, because what has happened in the last, since the Fast and Furious stuff got really popular, it's all about 1,000 horsepower, twin turbos, 1,500 horsepower, all that kind of garbage. And as you know, as a racer, man, 600 horsepower is serious in a street car.
Oh, yeah.
And these guys can't handle their cars. They can't drive them. They're scared of them. I mean, I had a guy one time, I was doing something with his Cobra. He had like a Super Performance Cobra on the show.
Yeah.
And I'm ripping it around doing some stuff. He comes up to me, and he was a really nice, you know, retired guy. After I'm done, he comes up to me and he goes, "Man, can you teach me how to drive my car like that?" And I was like, at first I thought he was kidding.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh my gosh, he's just a fairly wealthy older guy, always wanted a Cobra, and he's completely afraid of the car.
Oh yeah.
Because he just, and this is only a 450, 500 horsepower car. You know, of course it only weighs 2,000 pounds. So.
Exactly.
So yeah, they're scared of it. And so I've got guys all the time, and you guys have seen the YouTube clips, all the guys leaving the car events, and a lot of them are in Mustangs.
Yeah, they are. Yes.
But they're all testosteroned up. They want to show off, and they can't handle the car. So I try to, most of the guys now, and most of my content now is trying to talk to people and make them be more realistic in what they want, both in budget and in horsepower and suspension, paint jobs, and everything. Because a lot of these guys will get into a car, you know, and they only want a nice driver. They want to spend $30,000 on it, and pretty soon they're into a $200,000 build, and they don't know how they got there. And most of the time they don't finish it, don't know how to do it, and so those cars come out, and you know they lose a lot of money, and that does not help the industry. You know, so
what? So how did you get into this? I mean, did you go to college? Do you have a college degree in mechanical engineering or some kind of automotive, like the Hot Rod Institute or something, where you went to a vocational school? What?
Okay, really, that's a great question, man. I went 1 year to college. I dropped out of college. I wasn't a college person.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's funny because usually when I say that, you know, I've been like the keynote speakers at places like the Hot Rod Institute and stuff like that.
Okay.
And you hear this hush in the crowd, like I just said I was a drug addict or something, you know, and it's like, listen, you know, and Mike Rowe and I really agree with the same thing. It's like, we're not all college material. We don't all learn out of books.
Right.
You know, most of us learn like this.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was always learning, and I was always reading and doing that stuff. But as far as the schooling, I didn't do a lot. You know, I would take classes and things and welding things and classes and learn stuff, but it was mostly by doing it and by working with these guys that were just brilliant, you know, and I was doing that when I was 8, 9, 10 years old, working in their shops. And I was always that kid that was always asking all the questions. And you know how it is in the shop. Yeah. You know, I'd come up and say, well, what, show me how to TIG weld. And they're like, you're a stupid kid.
Yeah.
Why would I show you that? You're more, go sweep the floor. And I'm like, of course I'm a stupid kid. That's why I'm working here. You know, it's like, teach me something. And eventually they'd say, hey, come here. Let me show you something. You had to show that interest. And a lot of those guys, I noticed, once again, growing up, I was a big Bruce Lee fan.
Yes.
You know, and Bruce Lee, one thing that I really admired about him is that he showed the secrets of the martial arts that were not being shown at the time. And my approach when I first started doing trucks was very much that. There was a lot of stuff. When you would sit down with high-end builders, we would all talk about things and techniques and stuff, but not share them with the average guy, because you wanted to hold on. That was what made you unique. If you had a special technique on painting candy paints or suspension and stuff, it was almost like the racers, you know, they cover it up. It's like, you're not going to find that because we're all in competition. And I never felt that way. I was always like, you know, there's I want to learn what you know. You can learn what I know. We're all part of this bigger group. So that was kind of my goal on the shows, is to show people these things that they're afraid to ask, and as you know, that like when a motor thing, especially guys, a lot of times I realized I started doing some Hemi stuff, and I realized that most guys, because Hemis are rare at the time,
Sure.
you didn't have too many people working on them.
Right.
So they would sit there and they wouldn't ask a question because they didn't want to feel like an idiot, but they had no idea what a Hemi was, or what made it a Hemi. So they sit there and go, yeah, I know all about Hemis and stuff, and they'd be listening and realizing they're doing that. I would just go ahead and say, well, I'm just going to go ahead and explain this. I know you guys already know what I'm talking about. For those that don't, here's what a Hemi is, and here's how that works. And now everybody's on the same page. And you let the guy off the hook that might be afraid to look like he doesn't know what he's talking about. And slowly we've worked into it to where guys now are like eager to ask questions. I still do that, man. I sit down with anybody and go, okay, what kind of technique did you do? We're getting ready to do some more stuff with John Cossey.
Yeah.
And Cossey is like that. I took him over to a air museum of all these jets and everything, and he was like a kid in a candy store, just looking at all this engine stuff. He's just a motor guy, and asking questions and learning about things and all that kind of stuff. And that's what you got to do. The day you quit learning is the day you die.
Man, that is the truth. Knowledge is power, and that's
it is.
If you
and it's changing all the time. That's that's one of the things I really respect about what you're doing. You're messing with Cleveland's. I mean, nobody does Cleveland's.
Yeah.
They were. I remember I had one early on. I was right out of high school, and I had a 351 Cleveland in something. It was some street rod or something. Great engine.
Yeah.
But all the Ford guys were like, you don't want that. It's got oiling problems, and they said they're like got great heads on them, but all that other stuff. So everybody pointed you to the Windsor, and I've always had a love for the Clevelands, especially when somebody can make one run. There's something. So I love that you're doing that.
Well, thank you. And yeah, they have their oiling issues, but you figure out
you can fix them.
It's not that hard. I mean, I don't have any issues. People always cry and complain about it. I do things my way. One of my things I say, do what works for you. What you do to do an electrical wiring job might not be the same thing that I would do. Same in the end, but just different routes or how you secure things. So, that passing that knowledge, man, is just. There's a lot of guys on here, Unity Motorsports Garage, a bunch of other guys. They share the information with people, because we're not TV stars like you. I don't know how you did this. You must have knew someone in there. You didn't just take off to Nashville, with a guitar and say, I'm going to work on cars and play music. You must have had something planned.
No, actually, it's a pretty unique story. You're going to love this, actually. I had graduated high school. I started playing music professionally when I was 15 years old. Wow. And when I say professionally, in other words, I was getting paid for it.
Sure.
And there was really no music industry. I'm originally from Idaho, so out west, and I knew that I either, if I wanted to do something in the music industry, I needed to either come to Nashville, New York, or LA. And I didn't want anything to do with New York or LA.
Okay.
So I literally moved back here. I had $1,000 in a 65 Mustang Fastback, which I wish I still had, and 2 guitars and an amplifier and a suitcase. And that was it. And I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anything. I knew a guy that had been in a band, and he said, you can stay in my guest room until you can find a job. And so I literally started. You couldn't start any lower at the bottom, when I first came back here. And I had a really good run in the music industry. I mean, I did it for 25 years or whatever. Met my wife, at the theme park. Had a really good time doing it. I was on the Opry and did a bunch of stuff. And but I was also a huge car guy. Cars and guitars were always the thing for me. And it was crazy because, as I was doing the music thing, I started to get less and less involved in that. I didn't care about it that much. And also, I learned about the industry. And it was like, man, I had the opportunity to spend a couple of days with Johnny Cash,
Wow.
just talking with him. And it was life changing for me. I mean, just hanging with Johnny Cash
Oh,
like we
sure.
are in his house, you know, and listening to him talk about it. At that point, he had just been dropped off of Columbia Records after 30 years.
Wow.
Who drops Johnny Cash off of their record label? But in their eyes, he was old and, nobody wanted him anymore and he was discarded. And so he was literally starting over, you know, in an industry he helped build.
Right.
And I was like, man, I don't really want to be involved in that industry like that. And the ironic thing is I'm still involved in it. I do a lot of music stuff. I do more now than actually then, but now it's on my terms. I only play when I want to and do the stuff that I want to. But anyway,
A good
uh,
point.
I kept building cars. I had my own shop there at the house. I just had a custom shop and I just did custom stuff. And I got into SCCA racing, which
Okay.
I really got into that. I was 240Zs, 280Zs. Those were the ones I really loved. And yeah, I did a lot of sports cars and a lot of hot rods. I mean, that was my problem. I liked everything, Jeeps, the whole thing. And literally, in the mid 90s, guys, you know, TNN was out and it was the Nashville network and
Yeah.
it was the biggest cable network out there. And they had motorsports, they had hunting shows, they had everything. And I was like, there is no TV shows for like the aftermarket for the guy in his garage. There was like Two Guys Garage or what was it called? Not Crank and Chrome. That was the other name. Shade Tree Mechanic with
Yes.
Sam and Dave. But it was mostly maintenance stuff, how to do an oil change and check your tires and all that. And that was valid. I mean, people need to know that too. Nobody was doing any customizing stuff.
Okay.
So I had actually pitched stuff to the Nashville network and they were like, and then the show that I wanted to do was called The Inside Scoop, and I pitched it to them and I still have the letter they sent me back and they said, hey, we're really interested. We'd like to see a pilot. And I'm like, pilot? He flies the airplane, man. What the heck? I don't know what a pilot is. How do I do that? So I started checking around and people wanted $8,000 and $10,000 to do a TV pilot. And I'm like, So a couple years goes by. Dennis Gage comes out with his
Yes.
show, My Classic Car, which is more of a lifestyle show. But I knew I was on the right path. And so I talked to some of my friends about it. And literally, we had just grabbed, a friend of mine had a little digicam, and they just filmed me in the garage, very similar to what people do now with their cell phones.
Yeah.
And we just put a thing together. And we were didn't know really how to pitch it or do anything with it. And then a buddy of mine who I played music with, he comes in and he goes, did you see the paper this weekend? There was an ad. They're looking for a host for this truck show. So I literally answered an ad in the newspaper.
Oh, wow.
But the thing is, people like that and they're like, well, what a lucky deal, man. And it's like, man, I had a football coach in school and he would come in and he would write on the board before every game, there's no such thing as luck. Luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And we're all like, yeah, whatever. But I never forgot that. And this was exactly the same thing because for years I had been building cars and I had kept a portfolio of pictures where I had chopped tops and I had built engines and I built race cars. I had trucks, I had hot rods, I had sports cars. I had just done a paint job on a Corvair for a guy. And so when they said, hey, what do you have? I handed them all that stuff. They were like, holy crap, who is this guy? And then because I had been a musician, I'd been in front of cameras for years. I had done some TV commercials and all that kind of stuff. So when they said, do you have any on-camera experience? I was like, well, here's some of that. So they're like, you're the guy. And so I try to tell people that, as you're going through life and you're, getting frustrated because it doesn't seem like anything's working out,
Mhm.
What you're really doing is preparing yourself for those opportunities, because at this point in time, there were literally thousands of professional actors that tried to get this job, because it was, and they all came in and they're like, yes, Johnny, a small block Chevy is the, all
Right.
that. They weren't real car guys. And fortunately, Joe wanted real car guys for the truck show. And, the rest is history. And, but I try to encourage guys, it's like, it's really easy. And I had learned this in the music industry, because when I was first on the road with some bands and stuff, it's very easy to get on the bus and just ride the bus from town to town,
Yep.
watch videos, waste time, and you don't become a better musician. You got all that time sitting in the bus where you could really be getting good, but you sit there. And then when the tour ends, you're looking for a job again, and you're kind of wishing that you would elevate your craft a little bit. And it's the same with car builders. If you get out there and you start building cars and you start to lay on a style or something that's easy to you, well, you don't grow. And pretty soon somebody will go, well, I was going to come to you and have you build a $200,000 car, but I like the Ring Brothers better because of what they do. And you're like, well, but I can do that too. But they haven't seen you do it. And it's the same thing if you're an engine builder or a racer or whatever. You always want to keep pushing, and make yourself better. And it will pay off. But sometimes it seems like it takes a long time. I've got a daughter in England right now trying to be a musician. And she's like, Dad, but it's different now. It's like, yeah, but not really. The idea is the same.
Right.
The country you're in is different, but the idea is the same. Just keep on it.
She must be into classical music. Is it classical?
She's a pop jazz person.
Okay.
She's kind of caught in the jazz thing right now, and the pop world. And she's just, she does audiobooks. She's done almost 100 audiobooks. So she's really good at that.
Wow.
But see, I was more of and see, that's another thing too. You can't just do what you like. And it's the same thing with car stuff. I mean, you like Clevelands and Fords and stuff like that, but I bet you money, if I threw a small block Chevy in front of you, you could build the heck out of that thing.
Oh, I've had them apart.
Or whatever.
Yep.
Or a Ferrari. I mean, it's just an engine,
Ah.
And the thing is, I mean, really, you'd be surprised how many corners they cut on some of those exotic cars.
Wow.
But, the thing is, if you see, when I first moved to town, I was I was more of a blues rocker. That's like, I wanted to play, Stevie Ray Vaughan and that kind of stuff. I still love that.
Yeah, me too.
But nobody was paying. So it's like, listen, dude, if you want to make some money, there's a gig playing bluegrass that'll pay you $1,000 this weekend. I'm like, I'm there. What's bluegrass? And then you learn real fast. But see, it makes you better. And it's the same thing with building cars. I'll tell you something about Carz.
Yeah.
When I first went to him, when we did the motor for the V8 Interceptor, I wanted to feature that Boss 9. It's such a great engine.
I want one.
Okay, well, I go to John and I said, this car has got to have an 8-stack injection sticking out of the hood. And John's like, I don't do fuel injection. He goes, I'm a carburetor guy. He says, I've never done fuel injection. I don't like it. I don't understand it. I'm afraid of it. And now that's odd coming from Carz. The guy's brilliant. But he had just never done it before. So there was a fear factor there of the unknown. And I said, well, this engine's got to have fuel injection on it. I said, John, if you ever mess with fuel injection, you will be amazed how simple it is. And Cliff Moore, that works with him, encouraged him, said, listen, John, we need to do this. And so sure enough, John did it just like Carz always does. He woodshedded it for a couple of weeks and he came out, he's brilliant. And now he came up to me recently and he said, I love fuel injection. He said, I didn't realize, And so it's one of those things where it's easy to fall into that. Of course, somebody like John is so used to competing at such a high level. He didn't want to take a chance of something else and maybe lose, And I get that.
I get it too.
That's why you got to learn that kind of on the side, and then come out and do it. So.
Wow. Yeah, I tell you that Cougar. I mean, that's one of the things I saw it recently. Yeah, I've never heard it run or seen it drive that I can remember. You sold it, right?
Yeah,
You
I
sell
sold
these?
it last year. It went to a really good home.
Did you drive it?
Oh yeah. Oh my
How
God.
bad is that thing? Driving that thing?
Matter of fact, there's a whole the whole build of it is now on YouTube, all the way through the start to the drive and the finishing it up and driving it down the road.
Yep.
And we did a real fun thing with it. We had you'll have to watch the video, but there was a guy. I was doing the Huckabee show a while back, and there was a guy on there that does he's a Barney Fife impersonator, and he's really good. I think Rick Roberts is his name. You can look him up. He's a really good comedian. So I said, listen, I got to have Barney Fife chasing me down the road in this Cougar in a vintage. So we got a vintage police car, and we set this whole thing up with, of course, being, when you're playing with the V8 Interceptor, which was playing on the whole Mad Max
sure
Latz V8 Interceptor thing. I said, it's got to eventually become a police car. So it basically gets impounded. I get caught and impounded. And so it ends up where he's driving the car.
Okay.
In the classic Barney Fife manner. So, but it was awesome. Listen, you uncork that thing and it was scary.
Oh, man, I can imagine.
And just scream. Oh my gosh.
What were the street manners like? I mean, that thing made what? Didn't it make close to 800?
Yeah, it was 850. It was 850, I think. I think it was 790 foot-pounds and 850 horsepower. And honestly, it wasn't bad. It's a little nose heavy, like you would expect. It's because there's a lot of aluminum on that engine, so it wasn't really super heavy.
Yep.
But I took it through the slaloms a little bit, because I wanted to kind of road course it a little bit. Once again, going back to my Z car days. And it was okay. I mean, you had so much throttle steer that you could just bring the rear end around anytime you wanted. But it probably would have, if I would have really wanted to run some autocrosses with it, I would need some stiffer springs on the front.
All right.
And a few things. But it was there. It wasn't bad, for a car like that. But oh my gosh, and you uncork that thing. And people would they thought the stacks were fake until you open the hood.
Yep.
And yeah.
I heard John talking about it, saying, I don't know, I did it this time and I could have fallen on my face and it would have made less power. Remember him saying that when you guys were talking about that car.
Yeah.
Damn, man. And the interior of that car is it's phenomenal. That wood grain, the way that guy did the maple and all.
He's the same one. He did this guitar here. This guitar was in the Nashville flood about 10 years ago. This is a Paul Reed Smith. And that guitar was one of the early ones that was given to artists. That was a really rare, expensive guitar. And I got it from a producer in town. It had been damaged in the flood, and he was going to throw it in the dumpster.
Wow.
And I was like, he goes, you want this? Because he wasn't a guitar player. I was like, yes, I want that. Are you kidding me? So I got it, and I went to a luthier friend of mine. He's actually the one that fixed the brake and the neck on this one. And he's the one that did all the Jonathan McClanahan custom guitars. He redid the finish. He put the burst on it.
Yeah.
And he's the one, as we were doing it, because I was going to do the dash out in like a brushed aluminum.
Okay.
But wood was always the thing. But I'm not, because those original Cougars, they had that fake wood grain, that sticker, and I hate that stuff. And I was like, and I told Jonathan, I was like, listen, if we can do real wood, I would love to do it because it's 1/4 inch thick, so there's room to do the wood. He goes, just give me a template and I'll do it. So I had the template in aluminum that I'd already cut out, and I gave it to him. He did it in the same curly maple as that guitar. Put the same burst on it. Oh my God.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Damn. Now you sold the car.
I did.
So the cars that you build or the trucks, you sell them or do you? What do you?
Sergeant Rock is sitting right inside the door here. That would take a lot for me to sell that one. The Cheetah that I'm doing, of course, I build them all for me. I never intend to sell them.
Okay.
But the problem is I'm not a collector. I'm not like a Jay Leno or something. I don't have the
Yep.
money. I don't have the facility. And I hate to let a car sit. You know what that does to them.
Oh yeah.
You go out there, the tires are flat, they're all loaded up, and couldn't stand to see that Cougar sitting, and the same thing with Copperhead. So it's like, okay, I literally have to look at it and go, okay, does it benefit me to keep a $200,000 or $300,000 car that might get damaged or whatever? Or is it better for me to get rid of it and reinvest the money in something else? And that's a tough decision. I don't ever get rid of them if I feel like I still have things I need to do with them. But once I'm done with them, I like to get them out there, because now the guy that owns it, he takes it to shows. He does all kinds of stuff with it. We're working on doing a die cast out of it.
Wow.
Also the 164th and maybe the 118th with Acme. Because nobody does Cougars.
No.
So
I have a couple models.
Yeah, that's the only problem with most of the stuff that I build is just like really crazy. So they don't have the molding for them, and that molding is very expensive to build a mold to build a die-cast car. It's 50 grand.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Jesus.
That's why if you do a 69 Camaro,
Yeah.
you can go to Hot Wheels and say, hey, I want some Hot Wheels done on my car, and for a fee, they'll print you off some. And you can go to any die-cast company and do that if they have the mold. If they don't have a mold, they have to make the mold. And see, like with the V8 Interceptor, there's a couple of companies that have molds for Cougars, 67, 68 Cougars, but they don't have the hood, they don't have the engine, so they'd have to get all that. Because I'm a stickler, it's got to be accurate.
Okay, yeah.
It'll have to have that dash in it, that kind of thing. So all that they would have to create molds for. So it becomes a big process. It's not fun, because you always eventually have to compromise something. It's like
hard to recreate that dash in a Mattel car, in a Matchbox or something like that.
Oh yeah.
Wow. There's a couple guys here. Do you remember Mike Lavallee? Now he used to paint like the Flames. I remember he died.
Yeah.
He was like one of the best guys to do hand flames. He died I don't know, a couple of years, probably 5 years ago or something.
Was he the one that really brought the realistic flames out?
Yes, that was him.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have been trying to get in touch. Is he still around?
No, he died. He died
That's
probably 4 or 5 years ago, I think. Yeah.
I've got a 1940 Chevy coupe that I'm doing on the show as a classic hot rod.
Yep.
And I'm basically going back and kind of getting people into these older cars because they're cheaper now.
Sure.
Old 30s and 40s cars, nobody wants them, so they're cheap. And you can build a great little hot rod and not spend what you're going to spend on a second-gen Camaro or a square-body Chevy truck. And so I'm trying to use as many iconic names like Hallebrand and Holly and Edelbrock and all that stuff just to kind of do the history. But it's going to be black with flames, similar to the old California Kid.
Yep, I remember that car.
But instead of the traditional scallop flames, I want to use realistic flames. And Mike was the guy that there's somebody, I've got some friends that do that. But yeah, I thought he had passed away.
I have a buddy too. I'll give you his name. You can talk to him if you decide to pursue it. Who does great paint work.
Oh, yeah. We'll feature him on the show, man.
All right. I'll tell him. I'll give you his contact information.
Yeah.
He was on Biker Build Off, did a lot of bikes, flames. He's good.
Oh, really? Shoot, I may know him. It's not Horny Mike, is it?
Nope. I know who he is. No, it's Ronnie Kirkpatrick.
Okay.
So he's a good man when it comes to doing custom work. I mean, he does it all. He knows how to lead. I mean, he's kind of like you. I mean, when it comes to doing it, he does it the right way the first time.
Awesome.
I like this comment here. Man, yeah, Stacey always got me motivated to go out and work on my junk. There it is.
That's it. That's the best compliment too. I tell you what, I've talked about that before. those kind of compliments, or somebody saying, I'm in this industry now because of you, I,
Wow.
I, I wouldn't trade the Hall of Fame for that. None of that stuff matters compared to compliments like that, because that's a person that's out there doing something. And I'll tell you what, that'll change your life, man. Once you get out there and bend some wrenches, man, you learn things. You learn how to deal with trouble. You become a troubleshooter. That's the problem now. A lot of guys are not problem solvers anymore. You know, they're
Well,
like, oh,
here's a
what do I
perfect
do? You know, my latte is cold. What do I do?
example. Here's
Yeah,
a perfect example. I'm a carburetor man. I always loved carburetors. I grew
yeah,
up when fuel injection, I was wrenching on cars back in the early 80s, mid
yeah,
80s, when fuel injection was starting to come out on the 2.2 Chrysler and all that stuff. So I remember when it was coming out and how to diagnose stuff. What I see now, though, I mean, you can go out and buy a complete bolt-in fuel injection system. There's
yeah,
multiple out there, Fast, Holly, whatever. You can put that on there. But now when you got a problem with this, you better know how to read, your there's a guy on here, VRM, who shows
yeah,
his computer of all the, air, fuel, the oil pressure, all the data logging, to read
yeah,
the voltage on MPS or throttle
yeah,
position sensor, to know, hey, I better adjust this because it's too low, whatever.
yeah.
Compared to a carburetor, everyone's going to fuel injection. Have you seen issues with people with fuel injection, compared to a carbs?
It is so amazing that you brought that up. That this is a huge thing that's coming forward now, and nobody's talking about it. Everybody ran to fuel injection. I mean, they were slow
Yeah.
at first, and then all of a sudden, in the last 5 years, there's been this huge run to fuel injection. And listen, I've put on a ton of them. You know, the Holly Sniper units, the MSD Atomics, the Vitech stuff. I mean, they all make a good product. The problem is fuel injection is made to be driven. And all of these self-tuning fuel injections,
Yeah.
they self-tune as you drive. So what happens now, you take a guy and he builds a high-end car with a great engine that he only drives in the summer months of the year, and he only takes it out on the weekends. So he's not driving this car at all. So every time he takes that car out, it's trying to self-tune. So if all he does is idle around in traffic, it's going to tune itself for that. So the second he gets out on the interstate and lays into it, it's going to puke and choke and do all that stuff
Yeah.
until it retunes itself. But see, then you let a few years go by of that limited use. Now you're starting to have sensors go bad. You're starting to have things like that, and you can't just throw it on a diagnostic like you can down at the mechanic shop,
Right.
because it's aftermarket. And the guys at Holly and stuff, they're like, listen, we're not, you're on your own. You're supposed to be able to fix that. And so we're getting a lot of guys coming in. A lot of the questions that I get, for our podcast is, what do I do? How do I tune this? I can't get it to idle. I can't get it stumbles before wide open throttle. And it's like, well, how about a carburetor?
Yeah.
I got the Copperhead truck back, last year. We were doing a thing on it. I sold that thing probably 15, 18 years ago.
Okay.
And it's got that 572 crate engine in it with a Demon carburetor on it, a racing Demon.
There's a picture in the corner right here. See it?
Yeah. Yes. And the guy that owns it, he's driven it 1,000 miles in 18 years. He basically gets into it, drives his granddaughters and grandsons down to the ice cream place, and they get ice cream in Copperhead. And the truck runs great. Okay, so I get it back. Now there's some seepage around some of the gaskets, typical old carburetor stuff.
Yep.
But I get in the truck, I hit the key, and the thing just hits and goes like that. And I'm like, I'm telling you, if that was a fuel injection, a 15-year-old fuel injection, you know what I'm talking about.
I do know what you're talking about.
And so I look down the road of all these guys that have got these cars that have sat in these garages or these collections that they're buying at Mecum and they're never driving or whatever.
Yeah.
Let's them, they pass away, and now the cars come out to these people that, the next generation that has no idea how to tune those things. or to work with them, that's going to be a problem. So I try to tell people, it's like, and when fuel injection first came out, and Cosley will talk about this too, it's not that fuel injection's faster. You can outrun a fuel injection with a carburetor in a second. There are some benefits to fuel injection, starting, throttle response, that kind of thing. But listen, man, yeah, I mean, there's some benefits, but there's also some benefits for power. I had a Crossram P38 small block that Kazi did.
Yeah.
That's going in this new McLaren that we're getting ready to do. And it dynoed at 630 horsepower. It's got this beautiful Crossram 8 stack. I mean, it's cool. It's
yeah.
John looked at that and he said, well, and this is typical John's thing. He said, well, we got 630 out of it like that. He said, if I pulled that intake off and put a 4-barrel on, I'd get 750. He said that intake it just won't flow enough.
Sure.
So there is a lot of that goes on. People don't understand, how much power you can get out of these things and reliability. So this 40 Chevy Coupe that I'm doing, I put 3 deuces on it, and it's fun.
Yeah.
3 deuces, yeah, and there they are. And once you got them set, you don't have to mess with them. So 3 deuces and a stick.
Now you're talking.
Yeah.
So when do you want me to bring that 40 Ford over to the shop to get that finished?
Yeah, you need to bring that over. Hey, actually, I wanted to ask you, and the guys, I want to hear the guys chipping on this.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm doing on that 40 Chevy,
yep,
is I'm going back and doing it. It's a hot rod. I'm building a 40 Chevy hot rod. So, and there's a difference between a street rod and a hot rod.
Right.
There's a difference between a muscle car, a street machine, a cruiser, a gasser,
lead sled.
Kind of thing.
Yep.
I'm talking a hot rod. So, in your opinion, and you guys too,
yeah,
give me 3 or 4 or 5 things that when you see that a hot rod, in your opinion, has to have, and when you see something with this, you go, that is a hot rod.
For me, the first thing I think about is a flathead. Just when I open the hood, first thing I think about is a flathead Ford. Yeah. With Arden heads or something crazy like that.
Okay. So you're talking, you got to have a hot engine.
Yep. Definitely.
Got to have a hot engine.
Yep.
And something kind of unique, exotic. Does it have to be a V8 or can it be a 4-cylinder or a 6-cylinder?
It can be whatever you want. I mean, I think typically stereotypically it's V8. That's how I look at it, Yeah. Like lake pipe.
How about stance?
You always want it low in the front. You know what I mean? That's just how it is. The rake.
You're talking the stink bug stance.
That's it, man. When I was a kid, and we kind of grew up, we're about the same age. You might be a little bit older than I am. I'll be 59 next month.
Yeah.
And, you kind of grew up and it was either cars or trucks. In my neighborhood, there was a couple guys that had a Hemi. No, it wasn't a Hemi. It was just a Super B, like probably a 383 stick car. Another guy had a Corvette, like an LT1 Corvette down the street. My next door neighbor had a 68 notchback Mustang. So that's the stuff that I grew up with. My dad had an old Dodge Ram truck, like a 1970 Power Wagon, I think it was called.
Oh, yeah.
Thing rode like, it almost looked like Sergeant Rock almost,
Oh, yeah.
But man, that thing ran like garbage. It rode like a tank. But man, in the back of that truck going 70 miles an hour down the road, hanging on for dear life, that was all you wanted, man. And you kind of went the truck way, and now you're kind of coming back more cars, it seems.
The crazy thing is, now this is funny. This kind of goes back to not being stupid. Because I almost turned down the truck show because I'm not just a trucks guy. I was also into cars and stuff. Now I love trucks. I was driving a 32 hot rod at the time.
Oh, yeah.
Truck.
Nice.
But, so I love trucks. I grew up in Jeeps and all that other kind of stuff. But I literally was like, gosh, do I want to just do a show about trucks? I was like, what is that all about? Fortunately, I was smart enough to take the deal, and because I was able to turn into more of that. And I still do a lot of truck stuff, still love them. But it's funny because even to this day, I'll always be the trucks guy. People are like, oh yeah, you're that trucks guy. And I was really fortunate to be able to do something like that at a time when trucks were really hot.
Yeah.
They were just starting to become, popular. So
just think about Chandler. That was what, 78 or 79? Remember Bigfoot?
Yeah.
Bob Chandler's Bigfoot. That's what I remember when trucks. That was like, oh my God, look at that thing.
Oh yeah, we did a whole story on Bob. He's a really good friend of mine. I've got I've got his die cast over here. I got a big old Bigfoot die cast.
No kidding.
And I've got actually racing suits and stuff that his drivers and stuff donated to me.
Where are you now? At home or in your studio?
I'm in the shop. Yeah, this is my office.
Okay. Nice. Here's one for you. I remember watching Stacey on Spike TV. I record every episode when they come on TV on the weekend.
Oh, yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. They had us right at a good spot, too. And the thing is that people don't realize we were the only automotive shows out there. And see, that was the thing. When I first started doing it, nobody did any customizing stuff. And the crazy thing is, Joe, the guy that owned the company, he also did car and driver and horsepower and this kind of stuff.
Okay.
And a lot of those shows were kind of just the way they did. They were kind of faked. There weren't the tools weren't real, and the work they were doing was not real. It was faked, and that kind of stuff. And I would not do that. I was like, listen, I'm a car builder. This is what I do. I will not go on national television and be a fake. I just won't do it. That's wrong. It's like lying to the people. And I will not say I do something if I don't do something. People need to get the credit for what they're doing. And so Joe was like, oh yeah, that's what we want. And so immediately, I think the first show that I did, I replaced rusty rocker panels on a 66 Chevy truck. Nobody had ever done anything like that. And in that first season, I chopped the top on that 34 International pickup. I mean, we jumped in hot. Man, I was under all kinds of the people I was working for. Because it took time.
Sure.
They wanted to just come in and go, hey, let's just shoot a show today. It's like, no, it takes us a couple weeks to shoot a show because work has to happen. And so I fought that battle. Oh my gosh. Yeah. It was all kinds of stupid battles that you would look at and go, really? Right down to the shirts that I was wearing. So there was a lot of stuff, but in doing it, we were able to really kind of introduce the fabrication stuff, which then turned into a few years later, Monster Garage comes out and all that stuff. And of course they took it a reality direction, and that kind of continues to this day. But the thing that I've noticed, originally, I started doing that because the only shows that were out besides ours were showing like oil changes and basic maintenance kind of thing. And now, we introduced all the custom stuff.
Yeah.
Now there's everybody doing custom stuff and nobody's hitting the gap in the middle. You have the beginner, then you have the high-end professional builder, and then all of that area in the middle, nobody addresses that. Not everybody has $100,000 budget. And so I've got a couple books coming out. I've written several books and stuff. I've got a new one coming out on restoration to try to lay that out because, I did some studying a little bit back. I started taking a poll because I noticed a certain thing, and you'll know what I'm talking about. In the automotive industry, there's about a 75 to 80 percentile. Let that sink in, that number, for a second, of people that never finish their project. Now, I'm not talking about somebody that builds their project, takes it racing, and keeps tweaking on it. I'm not talking about that.
Yeah, no, I get it.
I'm talking about a guy that pulls something apart and it never, ever moves out of the garage again.
Wow.
And I'm like, why is that number so big? And it's because, they're not getting into it in the proper way. They jump into the middle of it, they get excited, and they usually jump in over their head. And nobody wants to admit it because, hey, we're guys. It's like, hey, I can figure this out. It's like, no, you can't. Don't start that hard. Don't start with the ground up restoration. You don't have the shop. You don't have the tools. You don't have the money. Oh my gosh. And so trying to, I do that on the show a lot now, is try to get people to think realistically about how to approach a project. And that way you can enjoy it, you know.
There's,
and try to go ahead.
There's a ton of cars. I bet you walk around any town, any of these guys are on, any town, you're going to find 2 or 3 different garages where you're going to find a car project that's been torn apart and never finished. You know, an old Corvette or whatever, tons of them. Yep. There's no doubt about that. The I like this. Terry Grover. Tim, Stacey was the most relatable guy on TV when it came to automotive stuff. And I have to agree.
Man, thanks, Terry. I appreciate that, man. Well, the thing is, what you were seeing was real. You know, when we would take them out and drive them and stuff, the grinding and the stuff and when I was welding, I was actually doing all of that.
So you don't just have the stuff. You go in there and pretend, oh, I'm going to do this. You were actually building the cars.
No, that was one of the things. There was a term that came out that we call them stunt wrenches, and a lot of the shows use stunt wrenches. And I won't name any of the ones that do it now, but
you don't have to. I know them.
Yeah, but what happens is that you have the talking heads that come out and they say, "Hey, we're about to do this," and then they go to a break and real mechanics come in and do the work and that kind of thing. And no, that's I couldn't live with myself on something like that. That was always the thing about trucks, is the work that you see me doing, I'm actually doing, and anything that I don't do, I'll always give credit to. Hey, so and so, my buddy painted this car. Yep. And we'll do a little story on him. You know, so-and-so did this. That way everybody knows, you know, I'm adamant about that. There's too many people that try to take credit for things. And no, that was why. And a lot of times if you watch the shows, I mean, all of a sudden I'll have a scar or a Band-Aid or something. Yeah. I whacked my hand a few years ago, but I lost a finger. And so I'm in a big cast. You can't stop. You got to just keep shooting it.
Oh my God. But yeah, I've always wondered that, you know, do you do a lot of the work yourself, you know, and the welding and everything and putting the subframes in or whatever you're doing?
Oh yeah. No, it's all that. And the cool thing is, I've been really, really blessed to be able to do a lot of R&D for a lot of companies right now. I'm doing some stuff for Holly right now. I've got this 70 Chevy van in here, a little shorty van, what we call the pervert van.
Yep.
You know, no windows or anything. And I'm putting an LS7 in it. And I went to the guys at Holly. I said, you realize, of course, that most of the suspension components on these are square body Chevy truck, with some exceptions. And I said, you pretty much have everything in your catalog to do a bolt-in LS thing on these Chevy vans. I said, you just don't know what you have. And they said, well, we don't have time to do that. I said, well, let me do the R&D for you and put together pretty much the bolt-in thing. So we're using motor mounts from this and that. And once it's all done, there'll be a kit that you then could go to Holly and buy as one part number. And you get the motor mounts, you get the right headers, you get the cross members, you get the suspension, the whole deal. So we do a lot of that. Wow. I'll always get back with them. You know, if I open something up here and start installing it and the directions or something are all wackadoodle, I mean, I'll get back with them and say, listen, this is wrong. You got to change this, or why don't you change it this way? That kind of thing. Because I found that I'll get the questions. Guys will write in and go, hey, what did you do to solve that problem? And it's like, well, actually, you know, and what's a better answer? Well, we just solved it with the tools that you don't have.
Right.
Or actually, I found that same problem. I talked to the company and now they have a solution for you. So.
That's nice. I just made a video for John Kazi on the P51D head. It's a new big block Ford cylinder head. Yeah. So I don't know if, I think I sent it to you maybe yesterday or something.
I didn't get the video. I got the pictures of the Cougar with the nose in the air.
Okay.
But I didn't get the video. I want to see that.
I'll send it to you.
We're getting ready to do a motor with those heads.
You are?
Yes.
Nice. Real nice.
putting it in a 73 Ford F-250 that's going to look a lot like Bigfoot, just smaller. It's actually street legal. Going to have a 460 with the P51 heads on it.
Ooh, that'll be nice, man. Love that. Paint it nice. Paint it. What color are you going to paint it? How do you decide that?
It's going to be blue on that one. The guy this actually is owned by a friend of mine.
Yeah.
So we're paying tribute. His father was a steel worker. And so he bought the truck brand new, or his grandfather. So it's been passed down.
Okay.
So we're going to call it Blue Steel.
Nice.
And have some fun with that. But as far as colors, you know, that's a really good question. I pretty much let the project kind of dictate to me what color it is. For example, the 40 Chevy, which I'm just calling the 40 Chevy Coupe, it's got to be black with flames. I'm doing a hot rod, you know, and when you're doing what I consider a traditional hot rod, black, yellow, or red are kind of your colors. Anything else becomes a street rod, you know.
Yeah.
And to me, it had to be flamed. You know, it has that black traditional flame thing. But then, you know, when I did Sergeant Rock, I wanted kind of when I got with the guys at PPG to create the color, I was like, I want kind of like a battleship gray. And then when he mixed it up, he goes, okay, here it is. I said, now I don't want any gray in it. I want a hint of green. But I don't want a green truck.
Right.
So it's kind of that light seafoam. When you look at it in the light, it looks silver. But then you would see it in the dark, it takes on just a little bit of an olive drab look, which is exactly what I wanted. So I spend a lot of time on paint on some of these. Some it's an easy thing.
Are you painting them yourself?
I've got my own paint booth here, yeah.
Okay.
I do about one paint job a year. I just don't have time. And I'm a real stickler on paint. So the 40 Coupe is going to go out to the Hot Rod Institute, and the students and the instructors are going to do that, and they're awesome. But I've got this. There's a new replica. It's a replica of the McLaren M6 GT. So it's basically that car.
I know them. Yep.
With a top on it. It's not the Roadster version.
Okay.
Well, what color do you paint that car?
Silver.
Yeah. So I'm looking at it, and I still haven't decided exactly, but there is that McLaren orange, which is not my favorite orange, but a version of that to kind of pay tribute, because we're doing a big thing on Bruce McLaren.
Yeah.
So it will probably be some sort of a metallic orange, candy looking thing, but I'm still kind of up in the air on it. I've thought about silver, you know, silver with some sort of accents on it, you know. There's certain colors you got to stay away from. If you paint that car red, people are going to think it's a Ferrari.
Yep.
You know, paint it black, you lose the shape. You know, so there's
silver.
Silver it's a good choice.
There it is. Yeah. Now, weren't they fuel injected big block Chevys in that thing?
Yeah.
Isn't that what they had?
Yeah. Yeah, they got the stack sticking out the back, the old mechanical fuel injection.
Yep.
That's the one that the Cross Ram Kazi engine's going in.
Okay.
Because I told them, it's like, I've had that engine for 4 or 5 years sitting on the engine stand, and I had a chance to put it in a lot of projects, and I'm like, nah, that engine doesn't go in a street rod. It doesn't go in a muscle car. That's an exotic thing. It's got to go in the back. You got to be able to look in there and see those. And so now we got a whole bundle of snakes, like in the GT40 exhaust system. That's what it needs to be. That the guys that are going to want that kind of car is, you know, that's what they want.
The guy that did the exhaust for the original GT40,
yeah,
he lives like 20 minutes from me.
Really?
Yeah, I'm gonna go. Yeah, he's like 85 or 86 now, and he still welds. Anything you can carry in, he'll weld. You got to be able to carry it in your hands. He won't weld anything. Yeah, I'll have to see if I can hook up with him. One of my buddies knows him. That'd be interesting to hear that story.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
George Dreesh, being a retired aircraft structural mechanic, I was always pleased to see Stacey integrate aircraft features in his builds.
Thank you, George. I love that. I'm a huge airplane fan.
Me too.
There's around over here. Let me show you this.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yes.
We've got that sitting right here.
Let me think. Is that a P38?
That's a P40. That's the Flying
P40,
Tiger.
yes, it was.
The
Yep.
Warhawk. P38. Yeah. We did a story on that as well.
That was the Lightning, I think. P38 Lightning.
Yes. That's that twin boom thing.
Yep, I know them.
No, matter of fact, George, you're going to get a kick out of this. I've got the SR71, that 59 or a 60 Ford panel truck I'm doing, world's fastest tool delivery truck. And that's the one I went to Kazi and I said, listen, we need to do a feature on another engine. I said, what do you got? And he said, I have just built, and I'm using his words here. He says, I've just designed the best heads I've ever built. And I was like, what? That's like Eric Clapton saying, I just played my greatest guitar solo. It's like, that's impossible.
Not going to happen.
So he said, yeah. He said, these are a step above the P51.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, these are for big cube Fords. And at the time, he didn't know what to call them. He said, I've been thinking about, because I had told him I was going to call this project the SR71 Blackbird, or the SR71 deal. And he loves old airplanes too. So he's all about that. And so he said, well, I was thinking about calling these heads either SR71 or the F4 for the F4 Phantom.
Yep.
Another great airplane. And I said, well, John, I said, F4 Phantom's a great plane. I said, but it's also a Tornado and it's also a Ford truck. They did the F4 big grain truck.
Yes.
I said, there is only one SR71. Everybody knows what that is. And I said, this project is going to be called the SR71. So if you want to put F4 heads on an SR71 project, that's up to you. He goes, they're SR71. So that's what that's what we did on that. And I told him, I said, listen, because it's called SR71, I need over 1,000 horsepower on pump gas with an air conditioning, all the stuff put on it. And once again, being a big Mad Max fan, I went to the guy that does all of the reproduction cars, and he owns the rights to that Scott injection. Yes. So I got one of those Scott injections with the right scoop on it, and that's what's sitting on top of this. I mean, it's the engine, and they dynoed that thing at 1,030 horsepower on pump gas.
Wow.
And I'll send you the video clip of it running on the dyno.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
The crazy thing, I was looking at the dyno numbers, and I got to looking at, okay, it's running that kind of horsepower at like 6,500 RPM. And I just happened to glance down at the torque numbers. It's like 900.
Yeah.
950 foot-pounds at about 3,500. Okay, so I've seen numbers like that. We're in diesel territory now.
Yes.
And so, okay, that one didn't give me as much. I'm like, if it's that much at 35, what's it doing lower? And it literally at 1,500 RPM, it's 700 foot-pounds right off idle.
Wow.
That's insane.
Tire shredder. That's crazy.
Yeah, I'm looking at this truck. I usually, get things with a 31 spline axle rear end in it. Not for that. I'm going to have to go 35 spline.
35.
Yes, I'm not about to break an axle on it. And I know I'm going to be romping on it. It's a big old heavy truck. If that it'll pull the front end off the ground with that.
Oh, yeah. You get a nice meat underneath that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I've got the big old.
Yeah.
And that's a full custom truck. I'm putting the big Thunderbird taillights in the back that look like big jet engines.
Yes, I know.
For taillights. And I've got 60 DeSoto tail fins that are running down the side. I'm grafting all that in. So it's a full-on custom deal.
Wow. With that horsepower. It's amazing.
Oh, it's going to be awesome.
So it's the Scott injector scoop that you're going to have on carburetors?
No, it's the full injector. What the guy did, and you can check him out. He actually sells these things. He took the Scott injection, which used to be a mechanical injection.
Okay.
And it was a race-only deal. And he took it and modified it to where now it's a digital fuel injection. So it's not mechanical anymore.
Right.
And so, he just uses a Holley computer. And yeah, I think it's got 4 injectors in it, and it's a really nice unit. I mean, the only drawback to it is that there is no air filter at all. So I've had to come up with a scoop thing to get air in it.
Put some screen in there or something.
Yeah, and I've got that. I've got a company that does that. You know, and to me, you can't get away from the cool look, so you can't put a big sock on the front or whatever.
Right. No. Here's one from my wife. Hi guys, Mrs. DragBoss and Boss Sets here.
Yeah.
Great information. Thank you.
Oh, it's nice to meet her. Okay, so how long you guys been married?
We've been together for going on 14 years. We've been married for 5.
Man, congratulations.
Yep.
So she finally talked you into it, huh?
Yes. I've never been married. You know, I never even had kids until I was 40 something, 45 or 46.
Wow.
40, yeah. Yeah. I just, you know, I started late. My career was the most important thing. And I was a very selfish person. Meaning, you know, I didn't really have anybody but me and hot rods. So when you have that mentality, you know, boom, I want to go buy a new carburetor. I'll go buy a new carburetor. I want to build a sensor. I'm going to do it. Once you add the family into, things change. You know, family is more important than these engines back here. And,
oh man, listen. I tell you what, I'm so glad to hear you say that, because I can't tell you how many people that I have seen. Listen, these cars, they can cause divorces. They can cause. I'm telling you, I have seen so many. Even with my extended family, you have a guy that has a garage full of stuff like you've got there behind you, and you let him die, and all of a sudden, all the greed will come out of the.
Oh yeah.
And people will just, because they think you've got a gun or a car or a guitar or something that they've got to have. And man, I tell you what, it gets ugly. And so I'm just glad that you know, that you said that, and you keep perspective on what's important.
Well, I've had my kids say, "Hey, Dad, what would you rather have? Your car's in garage, or us?"
Yeah.
I've had them say that to me before, you know.
Yeah.
Because we
call that the Ferris Bueller syndrome. Because I tell you what, you know, of course I loved that movie.
Yeah.
You know, back in the day when it came out and it had the Ferrari and everything in it.
250 or something.
Yeah, 250. It's California. But well, it was a replica of one, but I'm sure everybody knows that. Still looked good. Good looking car. But man, I see that all the time where guys, they have that thing, they've got that car, and they, you know, don't touch it, don't even breathe on it, get away from it. And the second they're gone, these people can't get rid of it quick enough.
That's it. I know.
And listen, I get that call almost every day. You know, people are like, "Hey, you know, Grandpa died, and I just got this pile of crap to get rid of." And I'm like, and some of it makes me sad. Because I do a lot of stuff in the cheetah world now, because we're building the one on the show.
Yep.
And so a lady calls up. She's from Florida. She's a widow. She's in her 70s. Husband just died. She said, "I have a whole garage of cheetah car. My husband was building one for 20 some years, 30 years, started in the 80s, never got it finished." And she says, "I've got almost $50,000 worth of receipts." And she said, I'd like to sell it. And I was like, "Well, what do you have?" I said, "I'm not interested, but I might be able to help you sell it." So she sent me a list, and this is all brand new stuff in the box, but it's all obsolete. It was like Predator carburetors. You know, nobody uses those anymore.
My buddy races with them all the time.
Really?
Yeah.
So, okay. So she could have, well, I told her, I said, "Listen, you know, your best bet is to sell it individually."
Yeah.
And she was like, "Well, you know, I'm a widow. I don't have time to do that." So it was really sad. You know, she didn't know what she had. And, you know, because her husband never really told her, didn't keep a record of it. You know, she didn't have contact of all the car guys that might be interested in it. And it was sad too, because there was a 446 pack engine. The guy was putting a Mopar in it.
Yep.
Okay. Well, the average guy building a Cheetah, since they were GM based, they don't want a Mopar engine in it. But that 446 pack engine, there is a Mopar guy that wants that thing. It's a numbers matching, 69.
Oh, yeah.
you know, and I was like, that motor alone, you know, to the right person. But I said, they're going to come in, you know, it just needs to be. And unfortunately, her husband should have written it down. So she knew. So I did my best to help her on that. But I say that to tell guys, it's like, man, make sure that you're telling your friends and family, you know, what you've got, what the value might be, the real legitimate value, where they might be able to sell it, you know, if something happens, you know.
Someone told me once, it was Todd Fuchs, who has a Facebook page that's just directly on Cleveland's and has a website. He actually gave me the website when he came to visit me on a trip during the summer. So I'm going to start moving stuff to that. So I have a website. You got to have a website if you're going to do this and be successful.
Oh yeah.
But he no, I just forgot what I was going to say. So let me think for a second. Oh yeah. So what he said to do was take those little tags with a little tiny string on them, put a price on it, like all the intakes back there. You know, they're all piled up all over. Put a little price tag of what they're worth on it. You know, when you get around, put 2 or 3 on during a day. You know, toolbox. I mean, have toolboxes, you know, full of tools. It's like, what is that stuff worth? You know, give them an idea, so you don't put the person that's going through all the stress, given this getting ripped off, you know, and get your deal.
Yeah, and that's, you know, unfortunately, we live in a time now where we have American pickers and all that stuff, where everybody thinks they've got a deal, everybody thinks they're a wheeler dealer, and that kind of stuff. And you got to know the market, you know, and your knowledge is valuable. In other words, if I came to you and I had an old Ford engine and I said, listen, I want $100 for this engine, and it's a Boss 351 Cleveland out of a 71 Mustang, you know what that's worth. I want $100 for it. You know, you can tell me what it's worth, but that would be crazy, because I just said I'd take $100 for it. You know, that kind of thing is when you go out there and you start doing that kind of stuff, you have to know where that is changing. And those markets change. I'll give you an example. Years ago, I was going to buy a 71 Mercedes 230 SL convertible. It was sitting at a Mercedes place. The motor was out of it. Now that's the little pagoda top car. Those are hard to come by.
It's a hard top. You put a hard top on it and take it off too, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I know the car.
And the motor was in a basket. And this is at a Mercedes dealership. Well, I had restored a lot of Mercedes and that kind of stuff. So I went in there, and it belonged to the daughter of a country music singer. And so I talked to her, and she goes, well, I want $12,000 for it. And she said, because you know those cars, when they're restored, are worth $30,000. I said, yeah, you'll put 50 in one to get 30 out of it. But she didn't know that. So I said, listen, I'm going to make you an offer on the car. Don't be offended, but I'm going to make you an offer, and I'm going to tell you why. I said, I'll give you $2,000 for the car. And I said, here's why. I just talked to the guy inside. The whole engine is in a basket. Half the parts are missing. It came from another Mercedes place that couldn't fix it. I said, so basically all I have is a body. There's rust on it. It needs a complete restoration. Just had some little rust spots, nothing real bad. But it still had rust spots on it. So it needs a ground up. And I was going to put a V8 in it and do some crazy stuff on it anyway. I said, so basically I'm buying a body, and that's all I'll give you for it. Okay. So she's like, oh, no, I can't do that. I can't do that. So a year goes by, and about every 3 months I get a call from her. She's like, well, you know, I got a guy looking at this car. He wants to give me $8,000 for it. Just wondered if you're a player. I'm like, no, sell it. Do that. So literally about a year goes by, and she's called me 3 or 4 times, and the price keeps getting lower and lower and lower. And so finally she comes to me and she goes, will you go $2,500 on it? Well, I knew I had her then, because she never did have a buyer on it. She just kept trying to do that. I said, no. I said,
poker.
I said, fortunately, I still have, you know, $2,000 that I can afford to give you for it. But I said, it's been another year sitting outside. I said, so you're lucky. I may look at it and say it's only worth 1,000 now because it's deteriorating faster than it was appreciating in that way.
Sure.
Okay, so I buy the car, and I have already decided it's way too much build. I don't want to do that for my wife. She doesn't like the car that much. Well, I knew some guys down in Texas that were specialists in those cars. I get on the phone, I pick it up Monday. I call him Monday night, and I said, I've got a 71 Mercedes SL, and I sent him pictures, that kind of thing. And I said, I'll take $8,000 for it. He goes, I'm on my way. So he jumped because he knew what it was worth. He restores them. And see, I knew that because he would actually get 50 or 60 grand out of one overseas or whatever. So he shows up. He literally drove up from Texas with his little trailer. He's in the yard. He goes, well, he says, I'm here. I obviously want the car. He said, but, what's your best deal? Now keep in mind, I got $2,000 in it.
Right.
And I said, well, what do you think? He goes, well, will you take 6 for it? And I'm like, of course. I would have taken 3.
Right.
Because I only had 2 in it. But see, that's that kind of thing. So he got a good deal. He was really happy with it. We became friends. I got a good deal. I didn't make a killing on it but the thing is, I didn't have the market that he had. And I didn't have the knowledge in those cars that he had at the time. So you have to understand, and a lot of people now, when they try to do the wheeling and dealing thing, they try to operate as an expert. And it's like, we've been doing this stuff 20, 30 years, 40 years, man. There's a lot of stuff that about cars and values and stuff that a guy coming in for a year or two, he's just not going to know. And he's not going to have access to those sort of people. And a lot of people, listen, I can spot a flipper a mile away. I won't do business with him. I just, it's like, why would I sell light to you so you can go make money on it? I sell stuff to enthusiasts.
Right.
And I started collecting, multi-carb setups years ago. I always loved them. So the 4-bolt carbs, the old Rochesters and stuff, and then the 3-bolt carbs, the 97s and 94s. I have probably hundreds of those in pallets, all rebuildable. I'd pick them up for $10 at a yard sale. Let's throw them in a box. And everybody, this was like in the 80s. Guys were like, oh, nobody wants that stuff. No, that's all crap. So they're giving it away. And I just thought it was cool. Now, just a core of one of those is $100. Just a rebuildable core.
Like a Stromberg 97 or something.
Like a Stromberg 97. Actually, a 97, just a core of a 97 will bring more than that.
Really?
And then, you can buy them new, but they're $350 new. That gets expensive when you put 6 of them on. Wow. Yeah. So, but the thing is, and I've had guys come in, these flipper guys, and they'll see them and they're like, oh, because they want to put them on eBay or whatever. Yeah. I won't sell them. They're not for sale. However, if I've got especially a young guy that's a hot rod guy, and he's like, oh, I want to do a 3-deuce thing, man, I'll say, take 3 of those. Just as long as you're not going to just turn and sell them.
Right.
I said, if you're going to build them, put them on your car, just take them. I'll give them to you. And I'm a car guy. I want to encourage car people to do stuff like that, not just turn and sell it. Anybody can do that.
My wife's car, that motor back there, actually it's back here. So that was built by a guy named Brent Likens. It's a 354 cubic inch Cleveland.
Okay.
Just regular stock iron heads make 615 horse.
Gosh.
So that's going to my wife's Mustang. Similar story. My buddy owned this Mustang for 20-something years. 69 fastback. Sat in his garage. I always wanted it. Never wanted to sell it. One day he called me up and said, listen, you still want that Mustang? I said, yeah, I do. He said, I'll sell it to you, but here's the catch. I don't want you flipping it. I'll sell it to you because I know you love the car, and I want to see you build it on your YouTube channel, and I want to see it get done.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to sell it to you if you're going to just turn around and flip it. And so I'm trying to hold that true, honor my friend Eric, because that car is coming back.
Good.
And I'm looking at the time now, Stace. We talked for an hour and a half right now. hour and a half. And I mean, we could sit here and talk for 2 hours, you know?
Oh my gosh, we can talk forever, man. And you got some great guys chipping in here too, man. I love it.
I wish I could get back to them all. I mean, it's just, there's so many guys that it's hard when you're talking with a guest to go jump back and forth, you know, and answer everybody's comments. And that really makes it kind of tough for people when they're watching this. So hopefully they can understand that. But I would like to have you on again, you know.
Oh, just let me know.
I mean, I think with something specific, like one of your projects that you're working on.
Yeah.
You know, maybe the 40 Chevy, something where we can just do a quick little video or get it.
Well, not only that, I mean, I can just pick up the computer and just walk in there and just walk you around it.
Oh yeah, like when?
No,
Sometime.
What's that?
On another video. We'll do a live chat.
Yeah. Well, right now, I can just unplug my power and I can just walk in there right now.
I'd love to see that behind the scenes.
Okay.
You know, let's do it, guys.
All right. Still got you?
Yep, I'm here.
All right.
Wow.
Okay, this is the shop area here.
Oh yeah, Sergeant Rock.
Sergeant Rock. And that's you actually see just how big this thing actually is.
And it does look silver right now. To me, it's silver.
Yeah.
You know,
but it definitely has a green to it. Now this is something that I just picked up. We're getting ready to do something on the show. This is a Swamp Sprite. This is an amphibious tracked vehicle. There's only 3 of these known to exist. And so we're doing a whole story on this. I pulled this out of California. Great story. Of course, there's the SR-71 back here in the back.
Oh, I see it. Yeah.
Let me show you this. Of course, you see the big P-47 sitting on top.
Yep.
That's just because I haven't got it hung from the ceiling yet.
Okay. Oh yeah. Look at that. Beautiful. You see that, guys? It's cool. You don't see stuff like this. You know, you might see your show, but you don't see this, you know, hearing the hood squeak when it opens up, seeing the engine. You're just waiting, you know.
Now what I've got, see, I just picked up a 66 Thunderbird hood that I'm going to blend into this. The problem that I've had with this, I'll talk you through this. These Ford trucks like this, they have what I call the Frankenstein forehead. They're not attractive. I mean, you got this big gap right here, all from the factory. I don't know what they were thinking, but look how nice of a slope you've got up here on the roof.
It's beautiful.
You know, so what happens, I'm going to come in here and slope this hood down. You see how nice the Thunderbird grill looks on that thing.
Wow.
So it's really cool. The thing looks like it's going to jump out and eat you.
Oh, yeah. What's that thing powered by, that swamp buggy? What's that? What's got for power?
That's got a little Ford Falcon straight 6 in it, a little 170.
Wow.
And listen, man, it fires right up. It runs great. So I'm not going to mess with the motor. I love the little straight 6. This is, I don't know if you saw I did this last year. This is what I call the mower box. This is where I took a 0-turn lawnmower and connected it to a toolbox. And now I have a 0-turn toolbox.
There it is. Park it in any garage. Parallel parking.
And it runs great, actually. I just, so we got stuff going on here. That's the hood there to the Cheetah. I'll show you the rest of the car. There's the 40 chassis. Of course, there's all of our camera gear and stuff. But right here, here's the 40 Chevy.
Oh, yeah.
You see, I'm fitting wheels and tires now. And, but you'll get a kick out of the motor here.
It's beautiful. Look at that thing.
Wow. And you see, I try to keep it on this as traditional as possible. But if you'll notice, I blended in. That's that new Holley mid-mount accessory system. That actually, when you paint it up and detail it, it doesn't look like it's too modern. It actually fits.
Blends
so
right
that
in.
actually looks like a hot rod engine, as opposed to something like this would be way too modern looking on a hot rod. So it's great on the Cheetah, but not on a traditional hot rod. And then this is that Jeepster. We just finished a level 2 restoration on that. And that's part of like what I wrote in the book. I pulled this out of a barn. This has 8,000 original miles on it.
Wow.
So, and part of the thing that I was doing with that, you know, one of the biggest issues that you run into when somebody starts doing something, they'll, you know, you always have a vision of what you want to do
Sure.
on a project. Okay, well, with that, I was going to stick a V8 in it, probably a little 289 or 302. I was going to do a Ford on that. I got too many Chevys here, and I was going to put bigger axles and just do that kind of thing, make it a nice kind of resto mod kind of vibe.
Mm-hmm.
I got to looking at it, and I got a hold of the guy over at Jeepster, man, who's a specialist in those. I showed him the numbers and the pictures, and I just assumed it had over 100,000 miles on it.
Yeah.
He goes, "You have any idea what you got?" He said they only made about 800 of those. They only made them 2 years, and he said that's got to be original. So I dug into it and actually started looking at the door hinges and things that would places that would show wear, and sure enough, 8,000 original miles. So what I did, and the segment I did on the show, I actually talked about that. I said, okay, so now what do? What happens when you just bought a car or a truck? Say you bought a Malibu and it turns out that it's a real SS Chevelle.
Yeah.
Or the other way around. Let's say you bought a Belvedere or a Roadrunner and it turns out it's a Belvedere. What do? Well, you may want to sell it. You may want to, you know, do it. Or what are you going to do? I said, with this, my plan was to do a really cool kind of resto mod kind of thing. Well, you don't cut up something like that. One of those sold for 60 grand at Mecum last year.
Wow.
So it's like there's a huge collector market for those more original. So I'm like, okay, so here's what you do. You do an original type restoration, upgrade the brakes, upgrade the carburetor, upgrade the electrical, all stuff that can be taken off, but make it drivable, you know? And so it's really popular, and it doesn't cost a bunch of money, you know? So that's, you know, that's a really good project. And that's what I see a lot of people doing now. They're interested in that. This is the LS7 that's going in the van out back, the Chevy van.
What's it have in it? LSX?
That has the 454 LSX, yes.
Okay.
This is my car. I've always loved these cars, man. The first time I saw one, I was like in high school.
Yep.
And I was like, oh my gosh, what is that? It was the gull-wing doors that got me. And I've got a buddy that's he swears, he's a big Corvette guy. He's like, that Cheetah, he said, you let me know when that's finished. It's like, it ain't for sale, man. Forget it. You don't have enough money to buy it. And he's like, yeah, just wait. But anyway, once again, I'm a big 8-stack injection guy. The thing is with this car, and you know, when people ask a lot of times, some of these projects take several years or more to finish. I mean, Sergeant Rock was a 10-year build. And the reason it takes so much time like that is that I have a zillion of them going on. And the show being a how-to show is not just about me finishing something so everybody's amazed. That's not what the show is.
Right.
It's for me to build something that encourages you to get out and build something. So if I jump past all of the details, that just opens up a bunch of questions. People go, well, what did you do? How'd you solve this problem? And so I've done that since the beginning of trucks, you know. They will all eventually be finished. They just, you know, they take their time. And a lot of times, you know, I have to wait for product to be built. Sometimes, you know, like I'm getting ready, like the engine on the Cossie thing, some of that stuff was prototype. So it had to take time. I mean, it took forever to get that engine.
Oh, yeah.
You know, just, you know, and I got to wait for them because I want to show their stuff. And then one of my favorites, I've got my tow truck here. This is my heavy metal tow truck. There's the cab.
Yeah. Yes.
And it's just waiting its turn. The chassis is right over here, buried.
Okay.
And that one I want to try to get on and finish that up this year.
Stacey, what's it say on the door? Something hauling or something? What's it say?
It says heavy metal towing and hauling. We pick up the beaten, broken, and abandoned.
There it is. Nice. It's beautiful.
And that was painted by the students and the instructors out at the Hot Rod Institute.
So what do they do there? Do they, like, if you had a car that you wanted to get finished because it sits in your garage now and you're in the 75th percentile, so now
Yeah.
you call up the hot rod institution and say, look, I have this car, I'd like to do this. Can I bring it to you, trailer it over there? Would you look at it, or how does it work?
They take on some clients. Yeah.
Okay.
They're limited on how many that they can take on because they are students, and that is part of the thing. You do have students doing some work on your cars, so it may not be the best work. It's going to be good.
Right.
It's going to be better than you're going to get at any place around usually, but it is. I mean, that's why it's cheaper. They have the school, and then they have a hot rod shop, and so they're trying to push that more. But no, they're a great school, and I have found that especially on stuff like this, I would rather. I know how much that would have meant to me when I was that age.
Yeah.
If somebody would say, "Hey, I'm going to give you access to a $200,000 car because I think you can do the work on it." Oh my gosh. I'd be like, yeah, if I can't do it, I will figure out a way to do it to that level. So.
One thing you notice is, like, when I was a kid in high school, I took a vocational school for like my senior year, but I did diesel mechanics. It was you drive off site to a vocational school, learn about diesel mechanics. What I noticed, they don't have that anymore a lot. They don't have industrial arts, where you went and made whatever printing press stuff and cut things out of wood. I don't think they even do that anymore in schools.
Yeah, no, they don't. They just, it's a shame what these guys have done, and I feel sorry for this younger generation. I mean, one of the guys wrote it in recently about just it's part of being a man, and we have really done our young men an injustice as a nation, not necessarily you or, we're doing everything we can to keep that from happening, but just from a nation standpoint, we just don't take care of our young guys anymore. So they're lost. They sit and watch video games and, have no motivation, don't want to get involved in anything. And, part of that, I remember, growing up, there were guys, man, I remember those first guys, I'd come in, and I'd lay down a weld or I'd do something, and those old crusty guys look at that and go, that's crap. That sucks. Get out of here. Wow. And I'd be like, okay, well, how's it better, So there needs to be a standard of excellence, and that's what I try to push on that. Getting people to do something to a high level of excellence is always what you should do, because, even if you're just doing it for yourself, you'll be shocked on how many people may come up to you and go, man, I saw that paint work or that upholstery work or something that you did, man, how much will it cost for you to do it on my car? And all of a sudden you got a business going. That's how half these guys started. Gene Winfield, those guys, that's how they started. It's like, you got to go to Gene. Gene does that.
And that guy's still painting cars. He's like 92 or something,
I know.
He's still got the same hair that he had back in the day. We
did a thing with him. I've known Gene forever, man. I became friends with him when I first started doing trucks because I wanted to do a bubble top S10 with him. And it just never panned out. So for, gosh, how many years now? It's 20 some years. He and I would always get together at events or something. We'd always like, yeah, we got to do something. We got to do something together. And I almost waited too long. I got him last year. I've got him involved in this 40.
Okay.
But he's not really doing work on cars much anymore. He's been having some health problems. So what a great guy.
He is. You ever see his house, his Star Trek house, or whatever he had?
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
That's funny, man.
Yeah, he did all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of those guys, I try to, hook up with them as much as I can because, I never had a chance to meet Dean Jeffries.
Okay.
It was a big influence on me.
How about Barris?
Barris, I had a chance to meet Barris. He was a cool guy. I actually talked to him about 2 years before he died. We did a show together, and he was a lot of fun. I had a lot of respect for him and, his brother Sam. Sam was the real builder guy. But, you know, the impact of George's stuff can't be understated, you know.
Amazing stuff. I can still see it when I was a kid because, you know, we're all the same age. Most of the
Yeah.
subscribers I have here are probably on this, what I see right now, the names, they're in their 50s to 60s to 70 range, you know.
Yeah.
We remember all this stuff, you know,
Yeah.
that Martian vehicle he made. I can't even think of the name of it now. That had a bubble top, you know.
Oh, yeah.
What were you thinking about? Like the Impala bubble top? Is that what you're going to put on that thing?
Yeah. I was going to do some sort of thing, kind of like, remember the Beatnik Bandit?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's
all
what
that stuff. Just a traditional bubble top because nobody had done anything like that. And now there's some guys that are doing that kind of thing. But, you know, the S10 was really hot at the time and all the lowrider trucks. And I was like, man, let's do a bubble top on one of those. It would have been easy to do it, you know, but it just never worked out. I was working for somebody else at the time. When I was doing trucks, I was an employee, you know, so I had to, you know, I had to do a lot of stuff that they wanted me to do. I couldn't just do whatever I wanted. And, you know, so that was nice. You know, when I started doing Gearz, you know, I can pretty much do what I want, but I still try to keep it, you know, you got to keep it down a path where everybody can relate to it. You know, I can't just do all Chevy. I can't just do all Ford. I can't just do Mopar. I can't just, you know, can't just do trucks. Can't just do hot rods. Yeah. I mean, you saw what I have in here. I got everything. And to me, a lot of it is things that will light a fire under people. That's why the tracked vehicle is there, because it floats and it has tracks on it. I mean, who's going to turn away from that? Oh my gosh.
I would love that.
Yeah. It's just cool, you know, and it's just a great story on how the Snowcat thing kind of came about. And there's a lot of people, gosh, those things are bringing stupid money now. You know, in a certain world, the guys that out there in the snow and stuff, oh my gosh, they'll spend 50, 60, 70 grand on something like that.
I remember in the movie with Jack Nicholson, The Shining. Do you remember that thing? Wasn't that one of those?
Yeah, that's what they had.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, except those were amphibious. This is an amphibious one, but same sort of, it's a thigh call. It was made by the same company.
Was it really?
Yeah.
So you go to work. So Rattle Trap Productions, that's your company that does the filming or the media aspect.
Yeah.
And then do you have a separate garage, or are they all one unit?
No, it's all one unit here. This is all just open garage here.
Okay. But you work for yourself now.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we own all of this. You know,
you go to work like, oh, I got to get to work at 8 o'clock. I mean, how does your schedule work? You probably
we've got guys that come in, you know, around 8:30 or so.
Okay.
And you know, I don't have the shooter. We shoot Wednesday through Friday.
Yep.
From noon to 6.
Okay.
So that's 6 hours of shooting. And so what that does is Monday and Tuesday like this, I'm able to do things like this and that kind of thing. But my schedule, I mean, I'm always doing something. I'm always up late. You know, I just I don't operate on a lot of sleep, you know. So
I understand. Well, let's cut it off. We're almost 2 hours right now. So I believe me, thank you for showing us your shop. That's awesome. That's a bonus right there. People see behind the scenes of.
Oh yeah.
You know, I really love that. And I want to thank everybody for being here. There's about 54 people here. So I put this on a replay because a lot of guys can't be here at that time with time zones and whatever else. So they can go back and see this, and we'll see how many hits this gets, because this is interesting. I mean, I'm still amazed that you would find time to come on DragBoss Garage, Stace, and talk cars and, you know, everything about cars.
Dude, I love this stuff, man. And you see, you just don't realize who's watching, man.
You don't. You really don't. Yeah. You know, and
I love what you do.
Well, thank you. Same with you. I enjoy this. I go back and I watched the Cougar. It was like 2 hours long. I think I'm at an hour and a half hour now.
Yeah.
Go back over it because I was watching it in segments. Now it's the whole thing.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can work on something together. You know, do another little live chat on something. So I appreciate that. And you know, guys, so please listen. The guys that are on here and who watches this in a replay, Make sure you like and subscribe the video, please. It helps build us, our channels, helps us bring more education to you and things you just never seen before or heard. So I appreciate you guys being here, DragBoss Garage. Give the thumbs up, like and subscribe, guys.